Welcome to a football show Thursday edition. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessee, and I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. More on both of those great local businesses here in just a moment. Nick, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm here. I'm happy. How are you?
I'm reeling from whatever the hell took place at Madison Square Garden last night. It was pretty ugly down the stretch. Anyway, this is a football show, not an NBA basketball show.
They play basketball during the SEC baseball tournament? I had no idea that was happening.
I don't have words. The 8-year-old was devastated, but you know what? She needs to learn at an early age what it is like to be a Knicks fan or a Mets fan. You got to learn early. And the trauma of last night, yes, Coach Will's terrible night. Up 14 with 2.5 to go. No big deal. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, I'm over it. I'm over it already. Lots of stuff to get to today because the new free agents and the veterans were finally available through apparently for no reason at all. Just took some time to get them out there. But Cody Barton spoke yesterday. Van Jefferson spoke yesterday. You guys got a chance to talk to Dan Moore, the big offensive line signing, as well as Tony Pollard. Also, we got some news, the passing of Jim Irsay. We've got L'Jarius Sneed health. We've got the tush push vote. A lot of stuff. Competition at the quarterback position. The offensive line development. Weight loss by J.C. Latham. So much stuff to get to. As Callahan also addressed the media on what was that? Tuesday. It was on Tuesday. He addressed the media. And the thing that's getting the most conversation out of this, and I think the most interesting part, is this 8-team competition that he's having during these different phases of OTAs. So we're going to preview OTAs, but I want to talk about his leadership style, the psychology of what he thinks, all the different things that are a part of this 8-team competition that's happening inside the locker room. But I think we need to start where every Titans fan is obviously paying the most attention, which is Paul Kaharski interrupting Cody Barton at the press conference while he's in the middle of a very good answer. Nick?
I hope that more than 3 people viewing know what we're talking about. That happened. That did happen. That in fact happened.
We got to give him a hard time. He apologized, of course. Cody, it's interesting. My first question to you, and this is the reason I bring up that, is that I thought Cody Barton started the press conference the first time we've talked to him, and I think he started it. He was very short with his answers. He is clearly intelligent and thoughtful, but he was not. He was intentionally sort of short with stuff, and then he kind of loosened up as the interview went along and as the press conference went along. And then Tehran asks a very thoughtful question. He's in the middle of a thoughtful answer, and because he'd been giving short answers, I assume PK jumped in right in the middle of his sentence. So I just had to point that out.
I had to
point that out.
A thing I will say: there is nothing I can relate to more than a guy who clearly wants to be funny more than necessarily is. That is my whole personality. And I just sensed that off of Cody Barton with his answers. There were a lot of pause, look around, and I love that so much.
The timing.
I have been that guy so much where it's very clear I delivered a joke. And it's very clear that I want everybody to laugh because I just so desperately love making people laugh. He seems to have that personality. He wants to make people laugh. He's got jokes. I like that.
It loosened up real quickly, and then all of a sudden, by the end of the press conference, I was like, "Oh, this guy's going to be fun to hang around with and talk with about the game." And again, so mostly just giving PK a hard time there. But I thought my first thought was like, do you see any threads, any themes? All 3 of the guys, the veterans that they brought in, it's first chance we've had a chance to talk to them. I'm just curious from a personality standpoint, the fact that Dan Moore. And this will get into our leadership stuff in a minute, but the fact that Dan Moore used the word vulnerable and listen within a 2-sentence back-to-back, I feel like that was I wrote that down for a reason. You mentioned Barton, Van Jefferson's thoughtful dude as well. It seems like that's the theme between the 3, at least from a personality standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, this offseason, you can point at the trends that seem obvious from free agency from the draft. It's durability. It is former captains, like leadership type guys who know how to run a locker room. And it's this whole cohesive, bring in people to be your brother's keeper, figure stuff out mentality. And the way Dan Moore talks about football, the way Van Jefferson talks about football, the way Cody Barton talks about football, very similar to the way the guys the Titans drafted talk about football, very similar to the way that the guys the Titans retained versus let go talk about football. There does seem to be this shift toward that type of player. I don't know if that's going to lead to more success on the field. Like, that's ultimately the goal. And if having guys who have these leadership qualities and this thoughtfulness is going to lead to the team playing better, great. But for now, it's off-season narrative, and it's a cool narrative. I like having guys who are good at talking.
Right.
But we'll see what it actually means in July and August when we start seeing full pad practices.
Yeah, no question about that. All right, so let's go L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed first. And it sounds like the only real change with what's going on, like he's rehabbing, he's in the middle of kind of working his way back. They're pleased with where he is. A lot of the same language you'd hear from a coach about an injured player, but basically that he's expected to practice more, and he's been around the building and he's been there more. It does seem like I don't know what you gained from the L'Jarius Sneed conversation. This was not a player that obviously Mike Morganzi brought in, so. What are your thoughts on the L'Jarius Sneed update, as minimal as it was on Tuesday?
Look, it is a good thing if they're going to practice him more. Just like fundamentally, he needs to be on the field more. And it is good that Brian says that the two of them are on the same page about this. Now, am I surprised that he's rehabbing both injuries? No, like that should be the expectation, right? Because one of them we've known is career-long maintenance, and one of them he is still recovering from. So if Callahan said, no, it's just the knee, or no, it's just the quad, that would have been revelatory. But the fact that he is still working back from something he had surgery for, and the fact that he is still managing the thing that we've been talking about he's going to have to manage his entire career, that adds up. Those two things are the two things he should be working on. Does it stink? Yes. Preferably your $80 million or $90 million, however much he gets paid, cornerback would have no injuries he's dealing with. But that's not the reality for the Titans right now. That's not the reality for Sneed right now. So the best thing that can happen is the dude's got to practice. The dude's got to prove he's still the guy they paid 15 months ago or whatever that was. And the dude's got to go out and play like a number one corner like they're paying him to be. And if he can be that guy, awesome. But I want to see it. And that's why selfishly I want to see him practice as much as possible. I want to see him be very good.
Yeah. He's an important piece of this puzzle. There's no question about it. Some comments here before we move on to the offensive line. Suss and Barton start a comedy breakdown podcast. What's more sus? Never heard that one before. Nick or Sneed's injury updates? Definitely Sneed's injury updates. Nick, you're not. There's nothing sus about you outside of name only. I really need to know, Eddie says, who's on each team. I want to bet on who's going to win the House Cup. We'll get to that. We'll get to the leadership and the 8-team thing, which is clearly caught on for whatever reason, both inside and outside of the building. Coach, PK steals joy from kids on Christmas. There you go. And here's an interesting one. Richard said last year, this team must have been completely leaderless. Amazing that an NFL franchise needs to have a setup like this looking for leaders. I'm glad they are trying to do something, but good God. We'll get to that. We'll get to all of that coming up. All right, let's play. I got a couple of clips here for you. Let's start with, in general, Callahan sort of talking about the focus of OTAs in general and sort of the negative plays and the mental errors. Here you go.
The technique of things, but it's just the emphasis of it, making guys aware. At some point, I can take you guys through, now probably isn't the perfect time for it, but just how we've set up the off-season program. I think guys have really bought into it. You can maybe ask them a few more questions, maybe they'll give you some more insight. But how we set it up, we divided our team into competitive teams. We have 8 teams now that compete daily, which you guys have seen some of the stuff on social media, just post-practice competitions. There's points on the line for everything we do, so there's an emphasis daily, and there's negative points. So to your point, Paul, about how do you teach it? Well, if you jump off sides in a group drill, those are negative points to your team, and so it's emphasized every day. We look at it, we talk about it. It's on our players' forefront of their minds, so every time we step in the building. So those are the things we have to get better at for sure, on top of the scheme. But I'm excited about what we've done and how we've done it, and we'll see if it pays off.
All right. At first, I want to give you my first reaction when I heard him explaining, because it did start to catch, And then every player was asked about it. And then that was the thing we were talking about. Now we have terminology like 4-H's. So at first I thought this feels like a high school training camp, summer camp sort of gimmick to get like young kids to focus is what it felt like. When I first heard it, I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then as you start to think through how he's executing these teams, it gets more into mixed groups, breaking up offense, defense, breaking up position groups, changing where they're located in the locker room, which apparently is very normal in every other locker room. The Tennessee Titans were apparently the outlier, according to the veterans. It's off. Tony Pollard talked about off the field, time spent away from the facility together. And then the 4-H's came up, which is a sort about asking each other about each other. I can't remember what all of them were. There was heroes, there was heartaches, there was hopes, and what was the other one? I'm missing the other one.
I don't recall.
Basically, it's a gimmick to try to get you to quickly explain some of the things about yourself so that other people get to know you. And it certainly the response from the players seemed very positive. The competition was fun. It kept things lively. They're tracking it, wins and losses. There's a reward and stakes. And as Callahan was leaving the press conference, we're all kind of in the elevator, and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's stakes." And so, but there was sort of they weren't exactly direct with what there is on the line or who finishes last and what's the punishment. But as I'm walking away from that, I'm thinking it's not about the game and the competition. Certainly it builds a bunch of different things. It's about the process. It's about breaking up a bunch of different people from different places, learning about each other so that they're more connected. And I read a lot about leadership, Nick. Giving agency to the people that run and help a business move, in this case, a football team, is really, really critical. When people have agency, they are more committed. They pay more attention. They work harder. They take more pride in what they're doing. We'll get to Brian Callahan specifically, but at first it felt gimmicky, and then as the explanation kind of wore on, I felt more like there's some sneaky good stuff in there from Brian Callahan.
Yeah, I mean this in both the most complimentary and most non-complimentary way possible. This is college football stuff. This is college baseball stuff. It's the off season, and we need to keep these guys focused on the main thing when they have all of the possible distractions. And that is not to say that it's the same distractions. This obviously isn't, oh, you've got classes and girlfriends and the bars. Like, this is adult life stuff of you can just be a person who's not here. But gamifying stuff works. And like, I'm not going to speak broadly on does this mean the team was unfocused, or does this mean the team was desperate for structure? We can save that later. But like, what I am interested in is, so who's bought in? And so who hasn't bought in? And how powerful is the buy-in? And how powerful is the dissenting rank? Like, the issue here is if you have 80% buy into this and 20% are like, I don't care. What's this punishment? Are we running? Are we getting fined? Right. Okay. Like, if you have any bad apples in the bunch, then the entire exercise becomes not great. So I think it's fascinating. I think it's a good thing. I think it's something we're making way too big of a deal out of.
I totally agree. I
think this is May 22nd, and we're starving for something fascinating to latch onto narrative-wise. And this is interesting narrative, but I think fundamentally it probably doesn't matter that they're doing 5-10-5 races.
No, what I think is interesting is Brian Callahan's evolution. That is what I think is interesting in all of this, which is that, A, he has adapted and changed his behavior as how he runs OTAs.
Yeah.
It feels like year one stuff where you bring in a bunch of rookies and a bunch of free agents and a new coaching staff and a new general manager, and we're going to try to like sort of kickstart a new culture or whatever you want to call it. But the fact that it's his second year and that he's changing how he's doing things is of note to me. Mm-hmm. It's not I agree with you. Like, it got way too many questions, but it was something easy for players to answer because they're living their experiences through this and to find out if it's working or not. And by and large, every player said they liked it.
Yeah.
Now that, like, again, if you're putting the 3 veterans were out there because they were free agents, not because they were chosen by PR to answer the question right. You know what I mean? Maybe Tony Pollard is put out there for that because he was a leader of a team or whatever. But it's about the process. It's about what Brian Callahan has learned from last year to this year and what he is implementing. And yes, I do think some of the comments are in there. I agree with you. I don't think it's of much importance to break down how mature this team was last year or how cohesive they were last year. I think it's pretty clear that they needed better leadership on the team in general. That's because the quarterback was a guy who wasn't going to be the quarterback very long and fairly young. You had some injuries on defense that would have been veteran players that were leading. The offensive, like the center's not even there.
Yeah.
I think out of necessity, they needed more cohesion and maturity and leadership. And you're bringing in a bunch of you're bringing in a bunch of rookies that are going to play prominent roles. And so this feels like the beginning of the rebuild type of stuff is how it felt. But I think it's of note because Callahan is making adjustments to his own behavior and practices. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, no, adjusting is fascinating. And I'd love to get into the psychology of why specifically this, who brought it to him. Was it his idea? Was it brought by somebody that's new in the coaching staff? Was it based on a book he read? Was it based on observation? Like, I would love to get into the why much more than the who. Like, who's on what team and who's
I don't
winning.
care.
And
I don't care who's on whose team and who's the captains. I actually don't care who wins or loses.
It's good detail to know who Tony Pollard is next to in the locker room. We're going to see that. We're going to go in the locker room and see that. So I Harry Potter marathon, good one, Eddie. I do think that what has he observed that led to making this change is the more interesting subplot than how's it working so far? Because, like, you put a bunch of professional athletes in a room and tell them to do a tug of war, they're going to get competitive about it. Like, that's just going to happen.
Put media members in a room and tell them to tug of war, they're going to get competitive about it.
It's a joke I've been telling since I was in middle school, but I think that the best way to make two people become friends is to sit them in a blank room, white walls, absolutely nothing in the room, and just a single Nerf ball. No explanation of why they're in the room. Just say you have 30 minutes and there's a Nerf ball. They're going to invent a game with that Nerf ball. Yes. They're just going to be like, all right, 2 points if you bounce it off of 2 walls, 1 point if you that's just how we interact societally, is that if you give us something to play, we're going to play. That's
how we start life.
Yeah.
We start life that way. By the way, where do you come up with this shit? Anyway, continue.
I was in middle school. I don't know. I was just talking out of my butt.
It's smart. No, you got a smart set of hindquarters there. It's good stuff. Keep going.
But yeah, I think that the reason for doing this, once we get more on that, is going to tell us more about the Titans' future than the execution of it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Jordan says I'm old enough to have been around for every newish head coach's day of tropes from media asking players to who's your locker beside. Jay says since Levis is clearly the best backup on the roster, why not develop him as such? Cutting him because of feelings makes no sense. Thoughts? We'll get to that in a minute because we're going to talk Cam Ward and Will Levis. I don't think anyone's suggesting that he gets cut. I haven't heard anybody say that inside or outside of the program, in the media or otherwise. So we will get to that. Yeah, I just think I'm with you. I'd like to know how and why Brian Callahan, and this kind of only happens in like one-on-one interviews or radio interviews or even like fireside chat type of settings where there's not a whole lot not a news that needs to be decided on. Yeah. You can get into, because I've spent a lot of time talking to Clark Lee, the Vanderbilt head coach, about this stuff. He has a giant wall in his office full of books, all of which are leadership books. And I get it, self-help and leadership and corporate stuff and communication stuff and psychology, that, your mileage may vary on what works for you or doesn't work for you. But he's got a huge roster of players, at like 100 players, and he has a book ready to go for each one of them at all times. Mm-hmm. And that's just a really interesting way to manage people. And does it lead to a deeper relationship in which, again, you are giving that individual agency over the situation. That, I think, is ultimately the key, is when you can give an individual control and agency over the success or failure of what's going on, big picture, people are more likely to buy in. And in this case, you've got a bunch of rookies and a bunch of new veterans with a new front office, some new coaches, new special teams, for example, and you need everyone to sort of, this is the get to know you period. And I would love to know how he sees communication, how he sees leadership, how he sees the psychology of motivation. That's what, and why did he get there? How did he get to those places? So it's a very non-football conversation.
No, and it's actually a really good, a succinct way to say it is what Coach Wills just said. He has taken off the offensive coordinator hat and put on the head coaching hat.
Very good, Coach Wills.
Maybe last year the lesson was there was too much focus on the schematics. There was too much focus on the in-game adjustment type stuff and not enough focus on the whole health of the organization, the CEO side of being a head coach. This is CEO stuff. The books Braden's reading is because he's a grind mentality, wants to be a CEO. That's exactly what Braden loves. So
super communicators and atomic habits. Let's go.
So maybe that is the lesson. Very, very astute there, Coach Wills.
No, that's a great way to put it too, to tie up like an entire 12-minute conversation into a sentence. And thank you for that. No, it's interesting. I'm fascinated by that stuff. I'm fascinated by, like, there's so many cliches about this stuff in sport, like culture and personality and identity, and like, but it doesn't matter what line of work you're in. You have a group of people that have to do something and accomplish something. It is, every single one of those groups is going to get to that goal in a different way because humans are complicated and different. Yeah. And so having tricks that aren't tricks, that are sort of foundational beliefs on that things apply to all people, is just fascinating to find out. And I happen to be married to someone who has, a leadership role in her company and is a psychology major. And like, I get it at home all the time. So I'm fascinated by all of it. And I'm fascinated by when you see a basketball team or a football team or any sports team do something different than was expected, especially in the postseason, as I'm looking at the Pacers and the Knicks as the 3 and the 4 seed, like there's a belief there in each other and in what they're doing. And you don't have to have that to win a championship to be good, because sometimes you're just too talented. But when you do have it, you can overachieve. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they're trying to do here. And what makes Brian Callahan is fast. It's just interesting. People are interesting. So, all right. Anything else from the leadership, locker room, dividing it all up, trust the process, off the field, 4 H's? Anything else? You good?
If we get really bored in June and July, we can do the 4 H's with each other. Aww. And just make this really a tender show.
Nick Suss is my hero and my heartbreak. See here. Here we go. Jordan giving me a compliment. I appreciate that. Smart question to Callahan yesterday on pre-snap preferences. Good to hear your voice at pressures. I don't really do that very often. I like the fireside chat stuff. But we are going to talk about that with Cam and with the Levis conversation here. Coming up right now. How about we do that right now? Let's hear from Brian Callahan on the quarterback competition. The reps, they're apparently splitting right now. Here was his opening thoughts on Cam Ward and Will Levis.
They both handled it really well. I've been pleased with their demeanor and their approach. Will's done a really nice job of getting better at things he needed to get better at. I felt really pretty good about his offseason work and how he's come back. Cam has done a really nice job of integrating himself, and a lot of that is just knowing the play call, being able to spit it out in the huddle, having the tempo, getting familiar with the receivers and what the words mean and how to call it and how your snap count sounds. All that stuff has been really well done on his part. So they've both done a really nice job getting up to speed where they needed to. Both had different things that they're trying to get accomplished. But I'm happy with where that's at.
All right, so let's start with the reps themselves, because there's a lot of I don't look at the internet very much, like social media, I should say. I don't look at social media nearly as much as I used to, but it got aggregated real fast that Cam Ward and Will Levis are in competition and are splitting reps, and it's a tether back, a callback to like last week when apparently they were all playing equal reps. They're going to have equal reps for now. OTA starts next week. It is going to, I imagine it's going to settle out very quickly with Cam Ward getting the majority of the important reps, as the important reps are coming. These aren't important. The aggregation on social media is ridiculous. I want to know what you think the two different things are that they are working on. He said Will Levis needs kind of general improvement and has, and I would write down like acclimation to NFL football for Cam Ward, all the little things he mentioned there, which is sort of like foundational. What are the different things, in your opinion, that he's talking about there between Cam and Levis?
Oh, I think it's as simple as this is Cam's first year in the playbook, and this is Will's second year in the playbook. So one of them is refining what they learned, and one of them is learning. So I think it's as simple as, I mean, Cam has only known he was going to be a Tennessee Titan since April 24th. So
Yeah.
whenever you want to say it, February, March, April, whenever he first really started, joking, obviously, but it is still a new process. This is still the first time he is walking through these plays. He is interacting with these plays. He is getting live reps, even if it's just against air, in this system. It's his first time. Levis, this is the first time he's had same head coach, same offensive coordinator, dating back to his last 2 years at Penn State. Like, he is at a phase where now he can actually kick into gear as, I know what I'm doing. There is no learning phase here. There is improving phase. So I don't want to, oversimplify this, but the difference is this is the first time Cam Ward's doing this, and it's not the first time Will's doing this. So if they were doing the exact same stuff, if they were learning the exact same stuff, that would be the biggest indictment on Levis ever. And I think we can say as many things as we want about Will Levis, but one thing you and I know, dude knows the playbook. Dude has learned the playbook. He is not still in the what do I do on this play phase. So that's the whole answer. Like, let's not get mired in the they're being treated differently. They just are different right now. One of them has done this before and one of them hasn't.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think it's really hard. Like, it's such a nuanced, and you're kind of simplifying it for me, but I feel like it's more nuanced because I agree with knowledge of playbook. I don't have any issue. Like, I agree with you on Will Levis there. I think he knows everything there is to know about the book. I think what Brian Callahan specifically said that Cam Ward is working on, I didn't write it down, but all the little lists he rattled off there of things are sort of things you have to have, like, inherently in your system, in your body, in your mind at all times, that you have to then go execute what you know about the playbook. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, or maybe I just watched him play last year, but I still think a lot of that's the stuff that Will Levis doesn't have or is needing to work on, let's say. Maybe he has some of it, but it's not, again, to be an NFL quarterback, you have to have 99% of something, and even the bad quarterbacks have 83% of it. So I'm not trying to knock Will Levis here, but it feels like Cam is learning the things that maybe Will has to go work on with Jordan Palmer. And it's not where a guy's going to be in the route. It's not going to be, how to call this play or manage the huddle. It's all the little things that sort of just make you a great player or make you an average quarterback or below average quarterback. And I don't know, maybe that's unfair. Maybe I'm being unfair. I don't know.
And we also, look, the things that Will struggles with fundamentally can only be simulated in live reps. And there's a question of, can you even simulate them in a world where quarterbacks aren't allowed to be hit in practice?
I agree.
So we're at a phase where there's not even a defense on the field, let alone a live defense. So if we're comparing it to the what is Cam doing that Will doesn't do well? We're at the part of the year where everything they're doing should be the stuff Will does well. So
it's true.
Again, let's not get bogged in the what they're saying on May 20th of it all.
Yeah.
But that's why this is what it is right now, is because the two of them just are at different phases of how they handle what's going on right now. They have different things to learn. They have different things to work on. That's just truth.
And I think Jordan is the one who said something about cutting Will Levis. I don't think cutting Will Levis is an option. I think he's clearly the most talented player behind Cam Ward of the other three. I think they would want him to be the backup quarterback, but in a perfect world, he plays very well in some preseason games and is an asset to a team that has an injury or needs a backup somewhere else and is willing to give up something very late in the draft, or maybe a number 2 linebacker for a backup quarterback who's got a ton of talent. And what you want to, the hook here, the plucking of if you're good at being a GM who can sell you something to another GM, it is, you have all the skills and all the knowledge to take this guy's talent to another level.
Yeah.
He's got so much ability. That's the physical traits are still just painfully obvious.
Yeah. And I think I can remember you and I having this conversation in 23, the training camp that Will just got there but Tannehill and Malik were still there as well. Where I'd be watching all three of those guys throw, and you have Malik with all of these incredible arm talents, and you have Will with all these incredible arm talents. And I'm turning to people and I'm like, Tannehill's still the best at throwing the football, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because there's this veteran confidence that builds. The more you've done it as a pro, the more comfortable you look, the more assured and at ease you look. There's gonna be the part of Cam Ward that's just like, he's got to learn how to do this. There's the part of Will Levis that's still learning how to do this. So if we get to camp and like Brandon Allen looks the most assured and in control, that might just be years. That might just be how training for football is, no matter how good your arm is, no matter how much your talent is. You got to learn how to do this. And so Cam will learn how to do it. We'll see how well he does it. But like, that's the phase we're in with Cam Ward. He is still learning how to play and practice like a pro.
That is a perfect segue into the question I asked about sort of the line of scrimmage. And the origin of this question is that in a fireside chat at training camp last year, he said to like, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us off no cameras and stuff, and no shooting video or whatever. Basically that he expects his offense about 20% of the time to change the play at the line of scrimmage, to adjust, to make a check, to see the defense and then respond. And I've had that in my head. It's just been like wormholed in there for the last 9 months. And I always wanted to know 2 things. Like, what did they actually do? And are the expectations the same? And then where is that relative to the rest of the league? Didn't have a chance to get to that with him this week, but I wanted to know, like, is that what happened? And is that what your expectation is moving forward? And here's what he had to say.
But a lot of our offense is kind of built in terms of play calls. We'll call 2 plays most of the time in the huddle. We have a lot of checks that occur, especially on third downs with the protections. So play, protection, it all kind of fits in the same mold. Didn't do probably as much at the line of scrimmage as I would have wanted to for a lot of different reasons. It's something I'd like to do more of. We still invest in it. We still work on it. And those are things that you got to earn offensively. It's a way that's enjoyable to play football. I think when you're good at it, it can be a weapon for you. But there's 11 pieces that got to fit into that too, and how that fits in with the rest of it. So things we're working on, things I like a lot. I've been a part of no huddle systems a lot in my time. I've been a part of kind of quarterback at the line of scrimmage driven. But you got to earn that. You got to be able to operate that the right way. And then everybody else has to be able to operate it too. So it's a totality thing offensively, but it's certainly something that we're gonna keep diving into and keep trying to push the envelope on, and then hopefully do more of.
We talk more with.
So I may be the only one who's fascinated by this stuff, but I am genuinely fascinated by, back to our kind of conversation about like leadership and culture and identity. It's so hard to kind of pinpoint what's great and what's different, and it works differently for different people. Defining good at the quarterback position at the NFL level is sometimes a very nebulous and vague, like, internal processing trait. Mm-hmm. And I think from the beginning of Callahan's tenure here in Nashville as the head coach, he's been very clear, in my opinion, that there are quarterbacks who are in control, and then there's all the other quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And he has, there are guys who are the system, and there are guys who play in the system. And the guys who are the system, there's like 5 of them maybe. In his life, he's worked with Peyton Manning, he's worked with Joe Burrow, he's worked with a bunch of other ones I'm sure I'm forgetting. But like Aaron Rodgers was the system. I think Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they are the system. I think Joe Burrow's in that conversation. I think they are the system. And to go back to Tannehill and you're remembering what it looked like when he throws the football, and then tying it back into this line of scrimmage thing. Certainly they didn't do enough of it last year. I think that's one of Levis's problems, is this sort of like natural inherent understanding of how it's all going to go. And then I think he speeds it up in his mind. I think the goal with Cam Ward is that he slows it down in his mind.
Yeah.
It goes slower for him and it speeds up for Levis. And that is inherently one of the major differences between the two. At least that's the hope. My issue with Ryan Tannehill all these years, because he had a great run there for the Titans, was that I thought Tannehill, and I talked to some folks about this, in the organization when it was happening, like Tannehill he is great within the confines of the play. And most quarterbacks, their job is to operate inside the confines of the play.
Yeah.
And the great ones don't need that shit. And I always thought Tannehill's biggest problem was that he couldn't really adjust he couldn't play the three-dimensional chess.
Mhm.
And that's not a knock on Tannehill. It's a knock on like most human beings. Most human beings cannot do that. And the ones who are truly great are the ones who can do that thing. And we don't know if Cam Ward can or not. He certainly put up numbers like he could in college. But I think it's very obvious that Will Levis doesn't have that skill either. Maybe he develops it. But clearly, as Brian Callahan says, it's an enjoyable part of the game, and it is a weapon that you can use that they clearly did not have last year. And the hope is that Cam Ward has that ability. We'll find out. But I find that whole process to be one of the most defining elements of quarterback play in the NFL. This is
going to relate to stuff, so please bear with me. I know you love
going on a journey. I love going on a journey. Let's go.
There's been this older quote from 2017 or 2016 or something that's been floating around these past couple of days since George Wendt unfortunately passed, where George Wendt and his nephew Jason Sudeikis were talking, and Sudeikis is telling the story of when he was just breaking into show business, and he asks his uncle, who's this Hollywood icon, "What advice do you have for me?" And glibly George Wendt says, "Get hired on the best show of all time and just ride the coattails, man." And so Sudeikis did that. He got on SNL and rode the coattails, just like his uncle did with Cheers. And to me, when you are somebody who does that, and in Brian Callahan's case, that's your first job is working with Peyton Manning. Your first job is riding that. You talk about a quarterback who is the system. I don't think any quarterback has ever been the system to the degree that Peyton Manning was the system. When that is the thing you are attuned to, when it's like, ideally in a quarterback-driven offense, this should be happening this percentage of the time, the ideal is Peyton Manning. And Brian has witnessed that and has grown up in that and has developed in that. And he's witnessed Matthew Stafford, who's a fringe Hall of Famer, obviously, and he's witnessed Joe Burrow, who was on the pace to be one of those caliber players. When you've been around that, the expectation becomes a little bit heightened, a little bit unfair. That isn't to say that Cam Ward can't be that guy. That isn't to say that Will Levis can never be that guy. But when you are comparing the ability to change plays at the line of scrimmage as an ideal to having worked with the guy who perfected that art form to a degree that there was skepticism that he had an offensive coordinator at any point in his career, that people were like, is Peyton the one calling the plays? Is Peyton the one drawing this all up? Is he the one designing the scheme? It's going to skew stuff. So this might have been a diversion, or it might have been exactly what you were trying to talk about. But when we look at guys figuring out how to do what Callahan wants at the line of scrimmage, we do have to remember Callahan has witnessed the best person to ever change things up at the line of scrimmage firsthand and won a Super Bowl doing it. So like the reality for what Cam Ward has to do to be able to reach that ideal is way, way higher than even the 99th percentile you were talking about.
Yes, because I think the second best player that was on that list of all time is Aaron Rodgers. And I think you have the guy running the entire football department for the Tennessee Titans who also won a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And so there's another layer to this as well, which he comes from the same exact philosophical sort of vision of all of this. I think Brady belongs in the conversation. It's why I think those three are the greatest quarterbacks of all time. John Elway did things differently. Steve Young did things differently. Joe Montana did things differently. Doesn't mean they all weren't smart players. They were. But I think if you're talking about the chess game at the line of scrimmage and seeing the things before they happen and manipulating other people with your brain, it is those three. I think it is Manning 1, Rodgers 2, Brady 3 of all time. And maybe that's recency bias. I didn't watch Fran Tarkenton or Johnny Unitas. I don't think they had the complex route schemes that they do today or the disguised zone blitz packages either. I just think those three guys, I agree with you. He is spoiled. The bar is very high for him.
And I talked about – go ahead.
Well, I don't think you know about this stuff until you see it. And I don't think we're not going to know about Cam Ward. But I think he shows a lot more of it in college than Will Levis did. Yeah. That's for sure.
I talked about this rather glibly at our post-draft live show we did that people might have missed out on. But to me, the perfect quarterback for what Brian Callahan likes to do is if you could go back in time and just grab 22-year-old Dan Marino and make him be the quarterback. Like, obviously, again, high standards, but like that is the caliber of quarterback of just like guy who can make every throw, can stand in the pocket, can read the defense, can throw the check down, can throw deep, can do whatever you want without ever getting antsy, while just staying calm, staying right there. And that's what Peyton was so great at. And that's one of the things Brady was so great at. And Rodgers was not the stay patient in the pocket guy. He was moving. He was
Manning
was better at everything. But yeah,
Manning didn't look calm though, because he trained his feet to not look
Yeah.
calm, because he's like, okay, we're gonna go this way, then we're gonna go this way. Like Rodgers, when he was in the pocket, was just so calm and smooth. So going back to what's funny about, you mentioned Marino, because you mentioned a quarterback, and what I think of is traits. When somebody says any quarterback in time, and we have a quarterback discussion, I think about a trait, right? And you say Dan Marino, and I'm like, accuracy. Like just the pure accuracy and touch that he had on his passes. Elway, it's about like the physical combination of everything. Like he just was a superior human being physically to other human beings. Just like the size, speed, athleticism. Andrew Luck is in that conversation as well. Like a 6'4", 240 who runs a 4.6, who can also throw the football on a dime 40 yards down the field. The thing is I think we overvalue arm strength. I think we overvalue athletic ability. I think I think accuracy is probably properly valued.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that is the least talked about, because it's the hardest to explain and pinpoint, is processing. It's just seeing it all before it happens, and then knowing how to see 4 moves ahead. And you're either good at, like, if you play chess with somebody, you either see 4, 5, 6 moves ahead, or you see 35 moves ahead. And I can't see past like the 4th move. So I'm just not good enough to be that good at chess. And that's it. Like, I don't know if you can coach that. I don't know if you can train that into somebody. I think you just have it. And maybe Cam Moore does, maybe he doesn't. We'll see. But I think that the separation between quarterbacks who do in this league and quarterbacks who don't is like 10%, maybe 20% of the league can do it. And the other 80 to 90% are just really talented athletes that are smart, that work hard, and that have a good system and good supporting cast. That's where I'm at on that. All right, we got a couple other things to get to here. First and foremost, Sinker's Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Sinker's, 4-time liquor store of the year. You know the deal. Great specials on wine. Great specials on bourbon. They've got an award-winning craft beer fridge. Go check out some local craft beers. There's a lot of great local beer in this city. It's beer drinking time. It's hot outside. Go get some of those pilsners, some of those lagers. Go check out East Nashville Beer Works. Go check out Bearded Iris. Go check out Jackalope. Go check out Southern Grist. All my favorite breweries. They're all there. Go check them out. Great beer fridge at Sinker's Beverages. 40 years of serving the community. Make sure you please check them out and support it. Sign up for the in-crowd. And this weekend, excuse me, if this weekend you are out having a beverage or having a house party or having a gathering or whatever, search Uber Eats for Sinker's Beverages and have the booze delivered directly to your house. Do not drive. Let them do the driving. You can do the drinking. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. every Wednesday through Sunday. Apparently, I did not tell PK. I've never told PK that, apparently. He was like, I didn't know that we're open on Monday and Tuesday. I'm like, well, maybe I should start hitting that talking point more on the show. 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. Not open on Monday and Tuesday. So don't ask for me to go. Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. until the meat is gone. Award-winning brisket. Pitmaster Bill, my guy, he's the man. Go check them out.
And if you guys are having gatherings, parties this weekend, invite us. We're fun. We're fun at parties, right?
Yeah, I think
we're good party guests.
I think you proved that unequivocally at our charity gathering at the NFL draft. You were the star of the show.
Yeah,
you were.
You want somebody to come in and tell you George Wendt quotes? I'll be there.
You know, I was thinking about that analogy, and I'm like, yeah, Sudeikis did ride some coattails, but like, he's also one of the most iconic television characters of all time on his own. Sure. You know, now I know Roy Kent wrote that script for him, but that script. But Lasso is spectacular. So, all right. Let's hear from we got some offensive line stuff here and then some news and notes. And then I got a quick top 25 game for you. We're going to play real fast. Here was Callahan talking about J.C. Latham's new bod.
Weight at the range that he needed to get it to. He probably admittedly was heavy at the end of last season as the second half of the year wore on. He learned a lot of lessons himself, about what it takes to play tackle in this league, the caliber of players you face every week, and there's no letdown. And I think every rookie goes through that phase where they realize, man, whatever I did before, I got to do it better if I want to have a chance to be the player I think I'm capable of being. And JC's capable of being an excellent football player, and he really dedicated himself to changing his body. Like a lot of first-year players going into their second year, find ways to do. He looks great. He's in great shape. He's moving really well. I'm excited about where he's at. But all the credit goes to him and just understanding what he realized it was going to take to be the player that he wants to be, and he dedicated himself to it. So
I'm doing it again, Nick. I know you haven't been on the beat as long as some other folks, but offensive line fixed? Question mark. JC Latham down a bunch of weight. You got Dan Moore being very thoughtful. He had some interesting explanations as to why the sack totals didn't necessarily line up with his evaluation of his film. Basically, kind of a technique versus results thing, which eventually you can do all the right technique, but if you keep not getting the results, you're going to have to, you got to make changes. But look, the center's not even here. They're not even in the lineup yet necessarily. So I think that's a concern here. But I think, you're seeing the commentary around Skoronski, JC Latham losing weight, Dan Moore stepping in at his age, talking about how much he's learning from Bill Callahan. It does. Kevin Zeitler's just, like a perennial all-pro producing kind of guy, even at his age. Are we finally in a new era of Titans offensive line play? Finally?
Potentially, yeah. For those of you guys who enjoy my thoughtful Geek Corner analysis and niche TV references, I wrote about the offensive line today on the Tennessean, and both are included in the literal first sentence. So go check that out.
The Venn diagram is our comment section.
Yeah, I'm sure Braden is pulling that up right now to laugh to laugh at the joke I made. But yeah, look, Dan Moore is going to be better on a play-to-play basis than Nicholas Petit-Frere was.
82 million reasons why.
So if you are projecting that JC Latham is getting better, if you are projecting that Peter Skoronski is getting better, if you are projecting that Lloyd is going to play more than 7 or 8 games, and if you're projecting that Kevin Zeitler is the guy he's been for 14 years in the pros,
even if you want a minus 5 or 10%,
then theoretically, yes, this offensive line is better. Theoretically, this offensive line is average. Average is an improvement. This has not been close to average for 3 years. I looked this up yesterday as I was writing the story. Titans bottom 3 in the NFL in the last 3 years in sacks allowed, in pressure percentage, in quarterback hits allowed, in quarterback hurries allowed. You also have to acknowledge they're bottom 3 in the NFL in pass attempts. So while they are allowing the most pressures, the highest percentage of pressures, the highest number of quarterback hits, the highest number of not hurries, they're not in the top end, but they're also throwing the ball virtually never. You know what they're last in the last 3 years is offensive plays run. They're not on the field as much. The teams that have the most quarterback hurries in the last 3 years, teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Chargers, teams that are always on the field and are throwing the ball a bunch. And then you got the Titans giving up a metric ton of sacks. They need to get to average before they can get to great.
Yeah.
I think they can be average.
Yeah, it's like if you look at if you go to NFL Reference and you look at the top 10 all-time interceptions thrown, like they're all Hall of Famers. It's because they threw the football a shit ton.
Like you know what the most unbreakable record in all of professional sports is?
Brett Favre's interceptions?
It is Cy Young's career losses.
Yeah.
Cy Young lost like 305 games.
Wasn't he like 600 and 300 or something like that? Or 500 and 300 or something like that?
The most unbreakable losses are negative things compiled by the best people ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because nobody's going to play that long. Nobody's going to be given that kind of leash. And I think that's where we are with the Titans. How is this happening?
Tony Pollard said you can't miss him out there. He's looking great. That's a running back talking about his offensive line. They always say positive things. Look, I will believe it when we see it. Not going to put my hand on the burner, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all, again, everything right now, it's all the right stuff. At this stage, you can't do anything more than what's good for this stage. Mm-hmm. And what's good for this stage is a second-year player coming in who's put in a lot of work to change his body and is now going to play a position that in theory should be slightly easier for him to play, and has a little bit more experience doing it and is not being asked to do certain, like, it's all good stuff. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but all you need to get to is like 18th in the NFL in offense, like whatever some like catch-all overall metric of PFF offensive line rankings or whatever. Like, you need to be 18th. If you can get to 18th, I think that's a massive step forward and a huge point of progress for the team.
No one gets fired if you have the 18th best offensive line in the NFL.
I mean, honestly, 22nd would be a huge step forward, but like, I think 20 is the bar. You want to be better than that. If you can be better than that, it would be a really good year in that department. Okay, a couple of quick pieces of news here. We'll wrap up this way, and then we'll dive into some athlon stuff real fast. But that is, Jim Irsay passed away. Obviously, we're seeing this on the national level and to some degree where people cannot just be human for 5 effing seconds. But I think the response to this from Titans people and from the NFL has been largely the right response. So I don't know if you have any response to the story, but wanted to point that out. A huge member of the AFC South for a long period of time. Certainly lots of, one-liners out there from folks over the years, but just a huge personality in the division for a very long time.
I never met Jim, so I don't want to personalize this in any stretch, but sad day.
What does having media rights or marketing rights in Ireland mean to you?
Cool. I think that it ups the possibility of the Titans playing a game in Ireland someday, which is good for us. That'd be awesome. I think that I recently, back in March, did the Irish football podcast. And the folks in Ireland were telling me there is a huge connection to country music, to Nashville, in that area. It was corroborated. I was talking to some friends over the weekend, and they told me they were walking around Ireland a couple of years ago, and they came across a Johnny Cash lookalike festival where it was just a bunch of people in Ireland dressed like Johnny Cash. Like, I think that there is some sort of kinship between the Emerald Isle and our town. So I think that it's a good fit. I think the Titans being able to market the team, being able to sell the country music, Nashville town identity in Ireland through marketing events, through flag football, through whatever you want to call it, could work. And if the Titans in 2026 end up playing a game at Stoke Park in Dublin, it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility. Because look, the team that's playing in Ireland this year is Pittsburgh, a team that has international marketing rights in Ireland. This stuff does matter. Does it matter enough to get the game? I don't know. But it does matter.
You know what else Pittsburgh has? They have direct flights from Pittsburgh to Dublin. What has Nashville recently added? Direct flights from BNA to Dublin. You can also get to Reykjavik too, direct now, which is also fascinating. But which is Iceland for those that don't know. T-Rack kissing the Blarney Stone would be great drama. Now that's the one where you have to hang your head off the cliff, right, and reach underneath and kiss it, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
I don't think his head will fit there. I'm just curious. Like, I don't think it'll fit. And then here's an interesting one. I don't know, like this there were 10 teams that apparently voted against the tush push. The tush push will not be outlawed. It'll still be a part of the game. I think I'm okay with that. I think personally, I don't like changing rules to like fix things that people are just being smart about. And you happen to have a player that does a thing or a set of players that can do a thing. I do think it's interesting the Titans were one of the 10 because they don't have a center. And so maybe you're like, please don't do this. But then I got to thinking, the Titans are actually uniquely qualified to stop the tush push because of Sweat and Simmons, you would think. And so I don't know why they voted against it. What just your thoughts on the tush push being outlawed or legalized? What do you want to see?
I am broadly against legislating specific plays out of sports. I don't like legislating the shift out of baseball. I don't like legislating the tush push out of... If people figure out a way to succeed, let them succeed, and it's your job to figure out how to stop it.
If you make $30 million a year, hit the ball the opposite way.
Yeah. I am a firm believer in the idea that we pay these people to figure out how to innovate, and we don't want to kneecap them for innovating. They figured out a thing that's really tough to stop. The thing with the Eagles is they don't do it at a higher success rate. They do it at a higher volume. It's never been about, they're so much more successful. It's just they do it so much more. And they're playing these primetime high-profile playoff games, so we see it more. And we get annoyed when they have that sequence against the Commanders where Frankie Louvu keeps jumping over the line of scrimmage. Was it Frankie Louvu? I can't remember.
Yeah,
who it was.
where he drew the penalty every time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's annoying,
Yeah.
but it's figure out how to innovate. Beat the innovators.
It's like Vrabel with the play clock and the delays of game or whatever. What's interesting to me is I'm curious if there's a rules conversation around this, as saying not that it's an unfair play in any way, but that it's almost impossible to spot the ball. That's where I wonder where this might be coming from, because I thought the Bills got a first down. I thought it was pretty clear the Bills got a first down with Josh Allen in the playoffs.
I thought they were short, but
see, that's what I'm saying. Like, you've watched a lot of football, I've watched a lot of football, and we think it's different, and we watch the same thing. And he wasn't necessarily under the pile in that play either. So I don't have a problem with it. The Eagle, I mean, we get the same. They've got a great interior offensive line over the last few years, and they have a quarterback who squats 1,000 pounds, as we hear 14 times on every broadcast. So, like, I do think it's an interesting. But I'm with you. I don't like legislating plays when people are creative and can do something better than someone else. Like, I think that's interesting. All right. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Go support our good local businesses. Go to the Tennessean. For a couple of bucks a month, you can support Nick and the Tennessean, pay for good journalism. So good stuff there from you. Quickly here, I want to roll through. I'm gonna name some. So the Athlon Sports 2025 preseason top 25 is out. You can buy a magazine now. Please go support us. And I want to ask you. I'm just gonna see, because you have not seen it.
Nope.
And you're in you cover the Titans. You're not in like study SEC portal ranking mode. That's not
Correct.
what you do. So, but you have some institutional knowledge on the conference
I
for
do,
sure.
yes.
So I'm gonna throw out random SEC teams and see how close you are to guessing where they are ranked in our rankings. Sound fun?
I'm gonna guess Vanderbilt unranked.
Unranked, but we got them all 1 through 136.
Okay.
1 through 136. All right. I'm gonna ask ones that I think are the most difficult to pinpoint. So I'm gonna see where you go. So
All right.
Oklahoma.
I'm gonna say Oklahoma comes into the year ranked 22nd.
I'm not gonna like this game. Oklahoma number 20 in our rankings. Well done, and I think that is a lot of respect for John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle, the new coordinator and quarterback.
It's a lot of betting on the offense.
I'm surprised you are as bullish on them as we are at Athlon. I'm surprised by that, because there's a lot of questions around Oklahoma, and their schedule is disgusting.
It's a bad schedule, but I like Brent Venables' ability to make a defense play well. I like the fact that they're importing a quarterback. It's just a matter of, is it going to work?
Alabama.
I think they're going to be a little lower than we're accustomed to seeing Alabama, but not so aggressively low that it's going to prevent your ability to sell magazines. So I'm going to say...
That has not ever been a factor.
I am going to say 8th.
They are 8th. God damn it. You do have the list, don't you?
I do not.
It is. We've done actually years and years and years of focus groups where you rank a team has no impact on how many magazines you sell. I'm serious about that.
That's incredible.
That's a charge we've been given many years. Like, oh, you just put Notre Dame in the top 10 to sell magazines. It's like, no, we put Notre Dame in the top 10 because they finish checks notes in the top 10 all the time.
Yeah, true.
No, what sells magazines is the cover art.
Yeah.
Think about social media and the internet. What gets your attention? Clicks, headlines, little clips. What sells magazines is not the rankings and the actual, thoughtful content. It's the cover looking real pretty.
Yeah.
That's what it does. All right, let's go to Tennessee.
Oh, when did you guys finalize these rankings?
Like this week, last week.
Oh, okay. So all of the news has adjusted.
Post Nico, yeah.
I will say a little bit ahead of Oklahoma. So let's say 17.
21.
Okay.
So just behind Oklahoma. And I think I wouldn't have them in the top 25, but I also understand why. I'd probably have them like 26, 27, something like that. I actually think Oklahoma's down there as well. Auburn.
Oh, God. I know that people are really high on Auburn, and I don't agree with that.
Oh.
But let's say Auburn just sneaks in, let's say 23, 24.
So I would have them at like 26 probably.
Okay.
But they are 31 in our list.
Okay.
So probably
that's more encouraging.
So closer to where you think that. So you're not buying the Hugh Freeze bump in year 3.
I am not. I'll see it when I see it.
I don't know what that means.
I'll see them playing better when they play better.
Is Texas the number 1 team in the nation in your opinion?
In my opinion, I probably have them number 2. but I am fine with them being number 1.
Behind whom?
Clemson.
Oh. I think Texas, Clemson, and Penn State are the 3 best teams on paper right now today.
Yeah.
And I don't like that you're with me on Clemson. I like being counter culture on my rankings. Damn it.
I like the team with the most talent being number 1, and Clemson has the most top tier talent at the most important positions.
I don't know. I think you can make the case for Texas. Penn State is number 3 in my list. So
yeah,
I would agree with that. All right, let's see here. A couple other ones. South Carolina.
Oh, God. They're a team. Let's say 28.
12.
Wow.
That was the biggest miss of the game so far.
Yeah, my first instinct was to say like 16, and then I'm like, no, we're smarter than this. We're not
going
to get Missouri'd 2 years in a row.
Well, Missouri's down. Missouri's down at 32.
But you remember how much I spent last year saying, guys, don't buy into Missouri. It's wrong. It's not going to happen. That's what's going to happen with South Carolina this year.
Okay, so not a believer at all in like all the things line up for South Carolina. It's
all the things lined up for Missouri last year.
Yeah, but they weren't good though. They didn't have Lenora Sellers. So here's the thing. I mean, look. The argument for South Carolina is that they've got they've got more talent than they've ever had. They've got maybe the best quarterback that they've ever had. That they've always been good in November, and that the schedule sets up perfectly for them to grow into who they are. And they've overachieved 3 out of 4 years, really almost all 4 under Shane Beamer. The argument against South Carolina, it's never happened before.
Yeah.
Which is what you're getting at, because we've never seen this before. They did have a stretch where they won 10 games, I think 3 years in a row, with the most underrated SEC player of all time, in my opinion, Connor Shaw, the follically challenged Connor Shaw at a very young age. I think South Carolina could be very, very dangerous. But South Carolina, I don't think it's the same as Missouri last year. I don't think that's the same. I think Missouri was popped up by its schedule.
It's not to the same degree as Missouri, but I think it's very similar of we're always looking for a reason to not pick Georgia, Alabama, or Texas. We're always looking for who is that trendy 4. I don't even know if South Carolina's 4 right now. I don't know how you feel about.
There's 6 in our rankings in the SEC.
That's who else? LSU maybe.
So Texas number 1, and let's go ahead and give it away. Texas number 1, Georgia number 4, in the internet, like the top 25.
Yeah.
LSU at 7.
Yeah.
Alabama at 8. Florida at 11, assuming DJ Lagway is healthy, and South Carolina at 12. Those are the top 6. All 6 in the top 12, which is technically a playoff spot in theory.
Yeah. Interesting.
You're a lot of so the problem with this rankings, Nick, is that a lot of like Florida and South Carolina, there's a lot of you have to just sort of assume with those two. The problem is there's nobody that really belongs. Like there's nobody that stands out after the top 9, in my opinion. The top 9 are very clear in my opinion, but after that, it's like 30 teams that are all about the same.
Yeah.
And so you sort of lean on, all right, overall talent, speed, coaching stability, quarterback talent, and Lagway and Sellers are among the best at that position. So I think Ole Miss is ranked, Texas A&M is ranked in the SEC as well. So
who's at the bottom of the conference? Is it Kentucky or Vandy?
Mississippi
State. Yeah,
Mississippi State is number 66. Kentucky is, off the top of my head, 46. Vanderbilt is number 40, but that means we've got them to make a bowl game, which is, I think, a positive development for Clark Lee if they were to do that again. Arkansas at 39. And then I think that's all of them, actually. I think that's all 16. So make sure you go buy a magazine. We really would appreciate it. Go buy a magazine. If you want a full hour-long breakdown of why the rankings are where they are, I hosted SEC Football Live yesterday with my co-host, Stephen Lassen, who I've worked with at Athlon Sports for almost 20 years, putting these rankings together. You can go listen to a whole hour of that, SEC Football Live, everywhere you get your podcasts on the YouTube page as well. So do appreciate all you guys for hanging out. Appreciate you, Nick. Sinkers Beverages, appreciate you. Special thanks for being a great supporter of the show. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Go eat some good, delicious, awesome meat this weekend. And I think that does it for us. OTAs start next week, right, Nick? We got OTAs starting.
Yeah, we should have access. We should have access on Wednesday.
We get to see football things happening.
It's going to be very fun.
It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Watch the Indy 500 as well. It's one of the best sporting events there is. R.I.P. R.I.P. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what we're talking about. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. Notifications turned on. Rate, review, subscribe, all that great stuff. We shall talk to you next time.